Hello everyone, welcome to UGC's EPG Pathshala. I am Dr. Soma Sarkar from University of Delhi. Today's lecture is on marine resources part 2. This will concern with the distribution, livelihood and the security concerns, and it is from your paper Resource Geography. So, through this lecture you should be able to explain the basic problems of marine ecosystem. You will be able to understand the impact of various anthropogenic activities on marine ecosystem, then explore major emerging marine issues related to climate change, and also identify the major international agreements to perfect or to protect the marine ecosystem. Since 2009, we commemorate 8th June as World Oceans Day as a chance to raise the worldwide consciousness of the recent challenges confronted by the global groups regarding the oceans. The oceans form the basic components to food security, well-being and survival of all life, control our atmosphere and are essential to biosphere. Mankind has lived with the oceans and survived by its services since time immemorial. But with ever rising global population pressure, the sustainable future of the oceans and the coasts are in question. Vulnerable marine biological communities, for examples like corals and fisheries, are being harmed by over-exploitation, unlawful, unreported, illegal and unregulated fishing, invasive alien species, destructive fishing practices and marine contamination, particularly with land-based sources. Similarly, extraction of mineral resources from marine ecosystem is loaded with risk and could conceivably cause extreme decay of marine conditions. An expected 33% of the world's coastal locales are at high threat of degradation, with the maximum risk possibly in Europe. Stresses to the coastal and marine assets in Latin America and the Caribbean increased remarkably with tourism, infrastructural advancement and the release of silt waste and industrial contamination. Erosion of sea coast are a recent burning issues in various African nations, where local communities are unfavorably influenced by changing sedimentation concentration in most downstream parts or increased erosion in degraded catchments because of dam construction in upstream areas. Eutrophication in the Baltics, North and Black Sea is also an issue, and an extreme one is the areas circumscribing the Mediterranean and the Caspian areas. The overexploitation of marine fisheries and the monetary effect of such practices caused far-reaching impact in parts of Asia and the Pacific, Europe, North America and West Asia. Climate change, another stressors to marine biological system, may likewise influence ocean mixing and flow patterns, that is the oceanic circulation, with remarkably consequences on the efficiency of marine ecosystem, to its biological communities as well as to the areas of fisheries. Now, let us talk about what are the problems related to the mineral oil in marine ecosystem. According to World Ocean Review 2014, in 2011, the world's natural gas reserves and the resources totaled around 772 trillion cubic meters. Resources account for the major share, accounting to about 577 million cubic meters, with unconventional natural gas resources like coal steam gas or coal-bed methane shale gases comprising around 60% of the total natural gas resource base. For many years, offshore natural gas and the oil production was restricted to shallow waters. However, as many older deposits have become exhausted, companies have increasingly moved into deeper waters. Therefore, onshore, if there is soil pollution crisis by oil from leaking pipelines, then offshore marine life, coasts and feather of the seabirds and the coastlines get polluted by oil spilled from the damaged tankers. Thus, major impacts of mineral oil contamination on marine ecosystem are on marine fauna life. So, how is it impacting the marine fauna life? Filter feeders, for example, that is mollusks or other marine living beings which often gulp down this water along with their food. The dangerous hydrocarbons in the oil stop their internal filtration system and exterminate them rapidly. Regardless of the possibilities that they survive, the poison can be passed along with the food chain when these poisoned mollusks are being consumed. Moreover, their metabolic procedures and the development is also impeded. In other organisms, reproduction is adversely affected, even genetic damage can happen. Furthermore, many marine fauna lose their sense of direction because many of them use very fine concentration of certain substance in the seawater as a means of finding their way around their environment and making it more difficult for them to forage or identify partners for reproduction. Marine mammals such as otters can die of cold if their coat is coated with oil. Furthermore, mammals often ingest oil when they attempt to clean their oil coated fur, and that can even poison them. Fish assimilates lethal hydrocarbons through their skin and gills. Now, let us go towards its impact on the marine plants, mangroves and the salt marshes. If we talk about the marine plants, oil pollution disturbs the gas exchange through the leaves and food exchange by the roots that kills the plant. In mangroves, say for example, in mangrove ecosystem, the vegetation dies when covered in oil, annihilating the natural habitat of numerous flora and fauna species. Moreover, oil infiltrations to greater depth in the soft soil of mangrove ecosystem and stay in the ground for long stretches. Essentially, now when talking about the salt swamps where the vegetation shapes the habitat for exceptionally well adjusted widely varied vegetation and animal life are lost when oil devastates this ecosystem. Therefore, mangroves, salt marshes and the soft substrata take at least 2 hours to sometimes more than 20 hours to recover, 20 years to recover from oil pollution. Lastly, we can see the impact on the seabirds. The most obvious effect of mineral oil is the damage caused to seabirds' plumage. Oil smudged plumage cannot carry out its essential functioning to repel water and to provide thermal insulation. In the process, the bird loses body heat and dies. Now, let us talk about the problems related to the over-fertilization of seas. The high productivity in the seawater is a consequence of nutrients that are transported by waterway from the land into the ocean. Phosphates and nitrogen compounds make most part of these nutrient enrichment, which actually plants need for growth, and in addition devoured by phytoplanktons and consequently frame the base of the substance wave, that is a food wave in the marine ecosystem. The high productivity of coastal waters in the long run makes them progressively alluring place for aquaculture. However, in many thickly populated areas of the planet, excessive amount of nutrients, that is huge amount extent of the origin from intensive horticulture, the agriculture used by fertilizers, are finding their way into the marine waters. So, what is actually happening? Nitrogen and the phosphate compounds from the untreated wastewater and through the air from the burning of petroleum products are likewise transported to the ocean. All these leads to algae bloom, but a serious threat are caused due to the propagation of toxic algae which, if enters the human and marine mammals food chain via fish or clams, it can cause even death. The blooms of non-toxic algae can also create problems when they die. The dead algae sink to the bottom. There, they are broken down by microorganisms through a process that depletes oxygen in the water. Low oxygen concentration in the seawater can lead to large-scale mortality of fish and other species. When the oxygen concentration continues to drop, most of the other species living in the sea floor also disappear. Only a few species that can tolerate low oxygen level remains, and if the bottom water finally becomes completely devoid of oxygen, even these organisms will die off. Therefore, the effect of eutrophication have come to light since 1960s. Scientists have noted that more the plentiful algae blooms, more will be the zone of oxygen deficiency in coastal regions, and finally major changes in the coastal ecosystem. A true dilemma therefore exists with global population growth and the requirement for agricultural production of grains, which will also increase, but this result in huge quantity of fertilizers mixing with oceans via the rivers. Now let us go to the problems that are related to the sand and gravel extraction from the ocean bed. Sand and gravels are extracted by ships from the ocean floor using suction dredging. According to WOR 2014 report, the extent of the damage and the destruction that is imposed upon marine habitat by the large-scale sand and gravel extraction has long been a subject of heated discussion. The North Sea fishing industry, for example, has voiced the fear that fishing could be impacted negatively by such operations. The impact can driving away the fishes by the noise of the suction dredger. The hunting and the spawning ground of the fish are destroyed by the dredging sediments that are stirring up. Similarly, fishing equipment such as lobster pods were ruined by these suction drainage. Another thing is extraction changes the composition of seabed sediments. When gravels or coarse grain sand is removed, the site or the void often filled with finer sand which is washed away by the current. So, what will happen to these finer sands? Finer sand areas abstract different sea dwellers than coarser grain areas and can change the species diversity of this particular site. Similarly, fish stocks are being compromised by the suspended sediments being stirred up, and that catches with dwindling as a result. After this, let us go to what are the problems that can come with related respect to the seafloor mining. Scientists agree that mining manganese nodules in the future would be a severe interruption into the deep sea ecosystem because of the harvesting machines could plow out big areas of the marine floor. In WOR 2014, detrimental impact that can be occurs are projected as while plowing through the sea floor with the harvesting machine, tired of sediments and ocean currents can move the sediments cloud through the area. When the sediments settle down to the sea floor, again the sensitive organisms, particularly the immobile one, are covered and died. Many of these organisms lived buried within the deep sea sediments, especially in the upper 15 centimeters of the sea floor. Then directly in the operational areas, this type of organization, that is sea organisms are killed, and they are either cannot escape the plow quickly enough, including the animals like snails, sea cucumbers and worms, or they can be vacuumed up with the nodules and die during the clearing process on the sea. The mining, pumping and the clearing of manganese nodules creates noise and vibration that disturbs the marine mammals such as dolphin and forces them to flee from their natural habitat. Again, the sediment laden water produced by clearing of the manganese nodules is released into the sea from the ship, and the sediment cloud so created even at the near surface water could disturb the growth of the algae and other plankton organisms. Now, what are the marine fisheries are actually in the state? Like, what is the status of the marine fisheries? So, within this scenario, the marine fisheries are at stake, and the reasons for such scenario is, for decades the catch from the world's fisheries steadily increased, with the result that many fish stocks are now classified as overexploited or depleted. Failed fisheries policies and the poor fisheries management are to be blamed for this situation. Short-term profit appear to make priority over the development of a low-impact sustainable fisheries sector that will remain economically viable in the long term. The statement gives a synoptic view to the current marine fishery situation, that is, due to the great demand of fishery product, fish farming is also steadily expanding, especially in Asian countries as food industry sectors. Many fish species raised in the fish farms are predator fish, which rely on the supply of wild caught fish as feed. Therefore, switching to consumption of farm fish alone does not necessarily protect wild fish stocks. Regarding the overexploitation, the review report of WOR says that overexploitation particularly affect long-lived fish species such as redfish, which takes several years to reach maturity and begin spawning. In extreme cases, it may even lead to the extinction of the stock. For example, stock of codfish, which is a cod fish in the northwest Atlantic of the United States coast, have collapsed after years of overfishing. Biologists now believe that due to the immense disruption of the marine ecosystem, it has crossed a tipping point that even the total ban of fishing, cod stock will not be recovered. So, according to FAO estimate, there has been a steady increase in the proportion of overexploitation and depleted well below the historical levels. Irrespective of the amounts of fishing efforts extracted the stock since 1970. Furthermore, due to the lack of alternatives, commercial fishing is increasingly turning to such species that were previously regarded as unprofitable or the poor quality or unfit for consumption. The WOR report further raises concern regarding the impact of litters on the marine life, where it reports that the National Academy of Science in the US estimated in 1997 that around 6.4 million tons of litter entered the world's ocean each year. Researchers discovered that the floating debris accumulates in the middle of the oceans in the North Pacific known as Great Pacific Garbage Patch. Much of the litter is harmless, but some of it is responsible for marine mammal deaths. Seals and otters, for example, which feed on fish, crab, or other such animals on the seafloor, are frequent visit these type of casualties. The ghost nest pose a threat to the fish, turtles, dolphins and other creatures that can become trapped into the nets and die. Propelled by currents, these nets can tear up corals and damage other habitat such as sponge reefs. Now, let us move on to the impact of climate change on the marine ecosystem. The first one to tell is the coral bleaching. A notable amongst the most dreadful impact of climate change is coral bleaching. It is a hazard to coral caused by high water temperature that kills them. As a late, marine environmental has seen ceaseless or the serious coral bleaching scenes around the globe, with coral mortality rising up to 70% in the few localities. Extreme weather has also been registered, that is, most researchers believe that climate variability will proclaim a new period of extraordinary, unpredictable and unusual weather. The frequency and the intensity of cyclones and heavier precipitation may rise. Such an incident would result to the physical harm to coral reef and other coastal biological systems and communities. For example, Hurricane Hugo and Marshes hit the USA Virgin Island National Park in 1989 and 1999 respectively and did huge destruction to the coral ecosystem. The third point is on the species encroaching on alien territories. As the ocean warms, the location of the ideal water temperature may shift for many species. A study has shown that fish in the North Sea have moved further towards north or into deeper water in the response to rising sea temperature. Similarly, the distribution of penguin species in the Antarctic Peninsula region is changing with reduction in the sea ice due to global warming. Other impact of global warming is on altered lifestyle of marine species. Rising temperature can directly affect the metabolism, life cycle and behavior of the marine species. For many species, temperature serves as a cue for production and any changes in sea temperature could affect their successful breeding, including the timing of reproduction and migration, then physiology, morphology, behavior, population density and distribution of many different species. For example, the number of male and female offspring is determined by the temperature of marine turtles. Some fishes and changing climate could therefore skew sex ratio and threaten population survival. Another cause of concern with climate change is rising sea level. Reports suggest that the worldwide ocean level may ascend by as much as 69 centimeter during the next 100 years, mainly due to the glacier and polar ice melting and thermal expansion of warmer water. This will seriously affect marine biological system, that is, the amount of light available to the aquatic plants and the algae reliant on photosynthesis could be diminished, whereby coastal habitats are already being flooded. Mangrove ecosystem may have to face some greatest challenges due to rapid sea level rise, as it is required stable sea level for its long-term survival. Other problem is acidic ocean. In the process of engrossing a huge amount of carbon dioxide discharged by the anthropogenic factors, the oceans are becoming acidic in character. Fish and other gill marine animals may find it harder to breathe in acidic water, as it is extremely difficult to extract dissolved oxygen from it. In addition, continuous acidification of seawater joined by restraint of the calcification procedure, that is, which is the development of calcium carbonate by marine form, species like shellfish or crabs, lobsters and corals may find it hard to build their calcium carbonate shells. In a few zones, these shells may even begin to break down easily. Till now, we have identified the various stressors and their respective stresses on the marine ecosystem. There is also essential to review the international agreements and their outlooks on the above said issues. To protect the marine ecosystem, a number of international conventions has been established that demonstrate significant level of international cooperation. Regarding international agreements, the 1972 Convention on the Prevention of Marine Pollution by Dumping of Waste and Other Matter, that is London Convention. The 1973 International Convention for the Prevention of Pollution from Ships, that is MARPOL, addresses mainly the marine pollution. Similarly, the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea, that is UNCLOS 1982, ratified by about 160 countries, and since 1994 represents an integrated approach toward shared use of ocean and their resources, addressing navigations, economic rights, marine conservation, pollution and scientific exploration. In the 2004 International Convention on the Control and Management of Ships, the plastic, water and sediment exemplifies collaborative actions to address the introduction of alien invasive species, as it can cause significant environmental and economic damage. Another notable global attempt towards marine ecosystem is the Global Program of Action for the Protection of Marine Environment from Land-Based Activities, that is the GPA, adopted by 108 governments and the EC in 1995. Although not enforceable, the GPA was designed to guide both the national and regional authorities in undertaking sustainable actions to prevent, reduce and eliminate marine degradation from the land-based activities. Many countries acknowledged subscribing to the goal, providing a means for developing collaborative strategies to address the coastal and offshore water degradation from affluent fresh water or influent fresh waters. In conclusion, therefore, it can be put forward that when 415 coastal areas are eutrophic, out of which 169 have hydrotrophic dead zones, global nutrient runoff increased by approximately 15% since 1970. Pollution and litters continue to be a significant threat to marine biodiversity. The use of destructive fishing practices further amplifies the impact of unsustainable fishing on marine biodiversity and habitat. Unregulated overconsumption contributing to decline marine biodiversity. Bycatch from fisheries can be a major threat to groups such as sharks, turtles and others, and there are many such issues that the concerns that are coming towards the development or the coming towards the proper management. And so, whatever may be the future of marine and coastal resource extraction, one must remember that protected and healthy oceans and seas are necessary to human prosperity. Therefore, financial security and also the development with sustainability. Thank you for joining me in UGC's EPG Pathshala. Thank you.